Hey everybody, I'm Rousseau. I do a little work here and there, and it looks like we're back in the Ready Ward. This time to talk about, as the title suggests, my little custom scale height tool. This thing. And as you can see, it has a bit of a code name. That is Shard, I guess. I mean, there's no A there, but I'm not really sure how else you could pronounce that. And, of course, something this poorly spelled has to stand for something. So, in true Nintendo fashion, we have put those letters in whichever order they suit us. In this case, Shard, or Shard. And for us, that stands for Scale Height. Rousseau, that's me, Delineation Device. So, what is it? It is a device that delineates scale height in some way, maybe more ways than one. And yeah, also there might be a little bit of symbolism. It is a small thing and thin, so shard. Shard of what? Maybe a ruler, who knows? But either way, looking at it, you've probably noticed that the right-hand side is a standard inch ruler. Well, it's 2 inches, but you know, it's a fairly standard 2-inch ruler as far as those have been standardized. And this particular 2-inch ruler does have some of those lines that you might see in more technically oriented rulers. I know there are some scale rulers that already exist, and I think they do have those, but they don't quite work in the way that this one does. So to go over that right-hand side, if you haven't seen something like that, you'll notice vertical and horizontal lines. And there on the right-hand side, there's only one red horizontal line. That line being a distinction between inches. So you get there, you are in a new inch. Each of the subsequent horizontal lines, halves, quarters, that sort of thing, go out to different vertical lines depending on what type of division that particular horizontal line represents. So, just for later reference, just so we have something to call all of these vertical lines, we will say that that red horizontal line in the center goes to the full line. And then from the middle out, we could say that those vertical lines are called full, half, quarter, eighth, and 16th lines. So, lines and spaces, this might get confusing, but there will be other things to reference, so I don't think it'll be that bad. Anyway, standard ruler on the right-hand side. In the center are millimeters, and every 10th millimeter is a little bit darker a line. Really, I could do one of two things, make those lines darker or get a better printer, or hey, maybe just get ink for the printer that I have. Still, none of those things are happening right now, so we can move on to the interesting side, the left-hand side, you guessed it. And here on the left-hand side, you'll notice that the vertical lines are not the same distances apart, but we will give them the same names, because there are still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and no, the horizontal lines won't match up in the same ways, but don't worry, we will get into all of that. Of course, first we're going to take a look at the little logo on the bottom because it has some other pertinent information, but it's real tiny. What does it say down there? Shard. Model number 5-6FT Alpha, version 1.0. Okay, well, what does that mean? Answer, 5 to 6 feet. I'm sure you got that. Alpha refers to the, particular selection of scales that are represented here. Version 1.0 is just that. We're starting at 1.0. We're not starting at 0.1. This isn't a Kickstarter project. I doubt that many people are going to use it, and that's just embarrassing. I mean, you got to start at 1 or you'll never get to 1. People don't realize this, but we do. You and me. Anyway, above that, starting at the full line, going to the half line on the left-hand side, there are green numbers, just in between those two. And if we start at the bottom and go up, the numbers are 1 to 300, 1 to 220, 1 to 160 in a wider section than most of the other ones, 1 to 87, 1 to 72, 1 to 60, 1 to 48, and 1 to 40. In addition to that, you will notice that some of the horizontal red lines are different lengths on the left-hand side. And as you might have discovered for yourself, those red lines that go all the way to the full vertical line represent the beginning of a section that is at least 5 to 6 feet in the scale that's noted in green. Red lines that only go to the half line represent the start of a new foot in whatever scale is noted to the side. Some of these scales do then have more than a 5 to 6 foot range, but all of them have at least the 5 to 6 foot range. So how would you use something like this? Well, I have a small selection of miniatures here, and we can go through them one by one and, well, figure out a few things. So I think we will start with a couple of dwarves. The rather drab one with the sniper rifle is a Games Workshop dwarf, and the other one is one of Atomico's Blood Bowl dwarves. Already you can definitely see that there is a difference in their heights, but I am not entirely sure what we are looking for yet, so I think we're going to have to appeal to a higher authority, and that higher authority is, of course, the 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual, and yes, you can find this in some caves, natural caves, of course, but not all caves, so I wouldn't go looking for one there. You might try eBay. Anyway, of dwarves, the 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual says that an average height would be around 4 feet. So, armed with that information, we can go to work. Now, since the scale only goes 5 to 6 feet, we're going to need to figure out which of these likely scales is the scale that we're looking for, and then we can use the ruler side to get a closer measurement. Upon measuring the Games Workshop dwarf, we see that it's almost 5 feet tall at 1 to 72, and that just won't do. So we will move up to the next scale, 1 to 60. Now, we want to avoid math at most cost, so we're going to glance across and see that a foot at 1 to 60 is about 3/16 of an inch. In reality, it's not 3/16 of an inch, because that's what 0.1875, and it's really 0.2, but 4 feet or whatever we're going to get close to, there can't be that much error, and we just want a ballpark. So we will measure him with the other side of the ruler, and ignoring that little bit of his hat, we can say he's about 3/4 of an inch tall, an extra 16th if you do count the hat, and that might account for another 3 inches or so, but either way, he's pretty much exactly the right height at 1 to 60. 4 foot without the hat, 4'3" with the hat. So let's move on to Atomico's dwarf. Measure him on the left-hand side, and he's over 5 feet at 1 to 60, so 1 to 48. Does that sound good? Measure him on the other half, and he's 1 1/16 of an inch tall, and we'll keep in mind that he has a helmet and some big boots on, probably boots with cleats, who knows? And in 1 to 48, 1/4 of an inch is exactly 1 foot, and a 16th of an inch is exactly 3 inches. So the other guy, we were off, but this guy, I think definitively we can say 4'3" with the helmet at 1 to 48. And at this juncture, I think it's important to point out that either of these scales could be considered 28 millimeter, but here, just with dwarves, you can see the difference that will make. So that, in essence, is the primary purpose of this tool. That is, you are at a flea market or a gaming store or something like that, and you found a mini that you think is going to work pretty well, but you're just not sure if it's going to work out with the other miniatures that you have at home. So here, for instance, is a Bones miniature that I've modified slightly. I changed the weapon, and that I've done in grayscale. So I haven't painted this yet, but I also have. This will just make the details easier to see. Anyway, we hold the left-hand side up to her, and I like this 1 to 48 reading, which puts her at about 5'2". 1 to 48, 5'2". I'd say that's pretty good. Better than the 1 to 60 equivalent, at least, which would be, what, 6'6" or something. She'd be pretty tall, is all I'm saying. So what's next? Maybe a tough one, a Shovel Samurai, and he's in a bit of a pose. And you could do a few things here. You could eyeball the ruler up a leg and then up his spine and ignore the, well, little spikes on his helmet. Or you could just do what I do and guess. Get pretty close and guess. Let's hold the left side up to him. And, ooh, this one's a bit of a tough call. Standing up, not counting his helmet, he would probably be about 6 feet at 1 to 60 or 5 feet at 1 to 48. So, I'm pretty torn here, but I am going to lean toward 1 to 48, mainly because I don't know how I feel about a 6'2" samurai wielding a shovel. I mean, I suppose it's possible, I've just never seen it. So we will move on to a Games Workshop skeleton, and I think we know what to expect here. We'll hold the shard up to him, left-hand side, and we can see that he's about 5'3" at 1/60, but he is slouching, so he might be 5'8" if he stood up straight. And that seems about right. Maybe that's about what we can expect from Games Workshop. But speaking of Games Workshop, maybe we should look at something newer. So how about this, a Space Marine? And if you've seen Space Marines before, you probably think this one looks a little funny, but that's because it is a white, right? A white for my Technomantic Blood Bowl team. So, again, Games Workshop model. He's standing with his legs apart a bit. He might be a little bit taller, but hey, he's not wearing his helmet, so at least we have that going for us. Holding the left-hand side of the shard up to him, we see that he's about 5'3" at 1/48, which just won't do. But at 1/60, he's well over 6 feet. If we check the right-hand side, we'll see that he is 1 5/16 of an inch tall. So what does that give us? 21 divided by 3 is 7. So at 1/60, about 7 feet tall, and that sounds good to me. Of course, it's not exactly that, but who cares? It's useful. And that's what it is and how to use it. If you visit the link in the description, you should be able to download a version of the file that'll print out 4 of them, along with all the pieces that you need to complete the thickness of it. I have made this out of 110-pound Georgia Pacific cardstock, but that's not entirely important. What you'll have is 1 printed piece and then 5 rectangles that are the same size for each of the 4 shards. And you just cut all of those out and glue the blank rectangles to the back of the 1 printed one. After that, it's up to you. I made a little slip cover. How fancy am I? Fancy enough to make a box that's missing 1 side? Yeah, I could do that. Also, as I've mentioned in the past, in some other video probably, it also comes in black. Of course, if you would like it to look like this, you need to do all of the edging before you glue it together. I used a Sharpie brand marker, but again, that's not necessary. But the edging before you glue it together is necessary because you won't be able to color the paper properly after the glue is dried. So yeah, you just want to do the edges first, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, not that much, and then glue it together, put some weight on it, and you're good to go. Just stick it in your pocket, and you too will be able to figure this stuff out without having to do too much math. Just some guesstimation. So, good luck. And until next time, this has been the Ready Ward on Russo Works, and I am Rousseau, out.